What happens when a beloved Hollywood star reaches his breaking point on live television? What we witnessed that night between Ryan Gosling and Jimmy Kimmel wasn't just uncomfortable. It was a masterclass in how not to treat your guests. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because you're not going to believe what happened next. The tension in Studio 6A was palpable from the moment Ryan Gosling walked onto the set. The audience erupted in their usual applause, but something felt different tonight. Jimmy Kimmel, known for his quick wit and sometimes cutting humor, seemed particularly energized, almost predatory in his demeanor as he gestured for Ryan to take his seat on the infamous guest couch. "Ryan Gosling, everybody," Jimmy announced with that trademark grin that suddenly felt more sinister than charming. The man who made us all fall in love with musicals again, even though some of us didn't want to admit it. Ryan settled into his chair with that characteristic calm composure he's known for, offering a genuine smile to the audience. "Thanks for having me, Jimmy. Always a pleasure to be here." But Jimmy wasn't interested in pleasantries tonight. He leaned forward with an intensity that caught everyone off guard. "So Ryan, I have to ask you about something that's been bothering me, and I think it's bothering a lot of people out there. Your recent comments about method acting, specifically how you completely immerse yourself in these roles. Some people are saying it's pretentious, that you take yourself too seriously. What do you say to that?" The question hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Ryan's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. This wasn't the usual softball interview setup he'd been promised by the producers. "I'm sorry, what comments are you referring to specifically?" Jimmy's grin widened, but there was no warmth in it. "Oh, come on, Ryan. Don't play coy with us. The interview where you talked about staying in character for months at a time, how you wouldn't break character even for your family. People are calling it self-indulgent nonsense. Are you really that committed to the craft? Or is this all just an elaborate performance for the cameras?" The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This wasn't the light-hearted banter they'd come to expect from late-night television. Ryan maintained his composure, but you could see the wheels turning behind his eyes. "Jimmy, I think there might be some misunderstanding here. I've never said I wouldn't break character for my family. That's not something I would ever do or say." "Really?" Jimmy pressed, pulling out what appeared to be a printed article from his desk. "Because according to this piece in Entertainment Weekly, you apparently told them that your commitment to authenticity means sacrificing personal relationships for the sake of art. Those are pretty strong words for someone who's now backtracking." Ryan's jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. "I'd like to see that article, Jimmy, because I can guarantee you I never said anything remotely close to that. And I'm not backtracking from anything because I never made those statements in the first place." The host's demeanor became increasingly aggressive, his voice taking on a mocking tone. "You know what I think, Ryan? I think you've bought into your own hype. First it was The Notebook, then La La Land, and now everyone treats you like you're some kind of acting genius. But maybe, just maybe, you're not as deep as you think you are." A murmur rippled through the audience. Some people gasped audibly at the unprecedented hostility. Ryan sat back in his chair, his calm facade beginning to crack. "Jimmy, I'm not sure what this is about, but I came here to talk about my new film, not to be ambushed with false accusations and personal attacks." "Personal attacks?" Jimmy laughed, but it was a harsh, grating sound. "I'm just asking the questions that everyone's thinking. When did actors become so precious that they can't handle a little honest criticism? You're sitting there acting like you're above it all, but maybe that's exactly the problem." The conversation had taken such a dark turn that even the studio audience seemed frozen, unsure whether to laugh, applaud, or simply sit in stunned silence. The cameras continued rolling, capturing every uncomfortable moment as the interview spiraled completely out of control. Ryan leaned forward, his voice steady, but with an edge that hadn't been there before. Jimmy, if you have specific concerns about something I've said or done, I'm happy to address them. But what you're doing right now isn't journalism or entertainment, it's just cruel. And frankly, it's beneath you. Beneath me? Jimmy's voice rose an octave. That's rich coming from someone who thinks he's reinvented acting because he can play a jazz pianist. You know what's beneath me? Pretending that your performances are anything more than adequate. You're a decent-looking guy who got lucky, and somehow that's translated into this mythology that you're some kind of artistic genius. The words hit their target with surgical precision. Ryan's hands clenched slightly on the armrests of his chair. And for the first time in the interview, his famous composure began to show real cracks. The audience was completely silent now, watching what felt like a public execution disguised as entertainment. "You know what, Jimmy?" Ryan said quietly, his voice carrying a dangerous calm. "I've been in this business long enough to know when someone's trying to create a moment at my expense. But I'm curious, what exactly are you trying to accomplish here? Because if your goal was to make your guest uncomfortable for the sake of ratings, congratulations, you've succeeded." Jimmy seemed to feed off the tension he'd created, his eyes gleaming with something that looked disturbingly like satisfaction. "I'm trying to have an honest conversation with someone who's forgotten how to be honest. When did you become so image conscious that you can't even acknowledge legitimate criticism?" The confrontation was escalating beyond anything anyone in that studio had ever witnessed, and Ryan Gosling was about to reach his breaking point in spectacular fashion. Ryan took a deep breath, his training as an actor helping him maintain some semblance of control, even as Jimmy continued his relentless assault. "You know what's interesting, Jimmy? I came here tonight because I respect what you do. I've always enjoyed our conversations in the past, but right now, you're not interviewing me. You're performing some kind of character assassination, and I have to wonder why." Jimmy's expression hardened, any pretense of professional courtesy evaporating completely. "Maybe because I'm tired of actors like you thinking you're untouchable. You float around Hollywood in your bubble, taking yourself so seriously that you've forgotten what real work looks like. Do you know what I was doing before this show? I was grinding it out in comedy clubs, getting heckled by drunk audiences, earning every laugh. You just showed up with a pretty face and got handed everything." The venom in Jimmy's voice was unmistakable now, and it was clear this wasn't just about tonight. This was years of resentment bubbling to the surface on live television. Ryan sat forward, his own voice gaining strength as he prepared to defend himself. "That's an interesting perspective, Jimmy, but it's also completely wrong. I've been working since I was 12 years old. I spent years doing television, small roles, learning my craft the same way everyone else does. The idea that anything was handed to me is not just insulting, it's factually incorrect." "Oh, please," Jimmy shot back, waving dismissively. "Spare me the struggling artist narrative. You had your breakout role in your 20s, and suddenly everyone's calling you the next Marlon Brando. Meanwhile, people like me had to claw our way up from nothing, actually developing skills that matter." The audience was now completely silent, sensing that they were witnessing something unprecedented and deeply uncomfortable. Some people were pulling out their phones, recording what was clearly going to become a viral moment for all the wrong reasons. Ryan's composure was impressive, but there was steel in his voice now. "Jimmy, I'm not sure what's happening here, but this feels personal, in a way that has nothing to do with me or anything I've done. Are you okay? Because this level of hostility doesn't seem to be about acting or interviews or anything we should be discussing on television. The question seemed to hit a nerve." Jimmy's face flushed red, and his voice became even more aggressive. Don't you dare psychoanalyze me. Don't sit there with that condescending tone and pretend like you're concerned about my well-being. You know what this is about? It's about holding people accountable when they start believing their own press. What? Press, Jimmy? What exactly are you talking about? Because so far tonight, you've made accusations about statements I never made, attacked my work ethic based on assumptions that aren't true, and now you're suggesting I think I'm untouchable. But you haven't given me a single concrete example of anything I've actually done wrong. Jimmy leaned back in his chair, his grin returning but looking more unhinged than charming. You want concrete examples? Fine. Let's talk about your Oscar campaign for La La Land. The way you and your team positioned you as this humble artist who was just grateful to be nominated, while simultaneously running one of the most calculated campaigns in recent memory. The false modesty was nauseating. Ryan's eyes narrowed. Jimmy, that's how every Oscar campaign works. Every single nominee and their teams work to promote their films and performances. That's not false modesty. That's the business. And frankly, it's strange that you're criticizing me for participating in the same process that literally everyone in this industry participates in. But that's exactly my point, Jimmy continued, his voice rising with each word. Everyone else admits it's a game. You pretended like you were above it all while playing it better than anyone. The whole time acting like you were just this regular guy who happened to make movies, when really you were calculating every move. The accusation hung in the air, like a toxic cloud. Ryan stared at Jimmy for a long moment, and you could see him, processing not just the words, but the realization of what was really happening here. This wasn't about his career, or his statements, or even his Oscar campaign. This was about something much more personal and much more ugly. Jimmy, Ryan said, slowly, his voice deadly calm. I think I understand what's happening here. This isn't about me at all. This is about your own insecurities and disappointments, and you're using your platform to take them out on someone who can't really fight back without looking like the bad guy. That's not just unprofessional, it's cowardly. The words hit their target with devastating accuracy. Jimmy's face went from red to almost purple, and for a moment, he seemed genuinely speechless. The audience was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning humming in the background. Jimmy recovered quickly, but his composure was completely shattered now. Cowardly? You want to talk about cowardly? How about hiding behind this fake nice guy persona while you look down on everyone around you? How about pretending to be humble while you're actually the most arrogant person in the room? Based on what evidence? Ryan shot back, his own voice finally showing real anger. You keep making these character assassinations, but you haven't provided a single example of me being arrogant or looking down on anyone. You're literally making things up and then attacking me for things that exist only in your imagination. Jimmy stood up suddenly, towering over his guest in what was clearly meant to be an intimidating gesture. You know what? I don't need to prove anything to you. This is my show, and if I think you're full of yourself, then that's what we're going to talk about. The power play was so blatant and childish that even some of Jimmy's most loyal audience members began to shift uncomfortably. Ryan remained seated, but his body language had changed completely. The relaxed, friendly demeanor was gone, replaced by something much more guarded and alert. Actually, Jimmy, you do need to prove your accusations if you're going to make them on national television. That's kind of how journalism works. You can't just decide someone is arrogant and then treat that as fact without any supporting evidence. Jimmy began pacing behind his desk like a caged animal, his movements erratic and unsettling. You want evidence? How about the fact that you're sitting here right now, lecturing me about journalism like you have any idea what real work looks like? You memorize lines written by other people and stand in front of cameras. That's not exactly brain surgery. The contempt in Jimmy's voice was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Ryan stood up slowly, his decision clearly made. The interview had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, and everyone in that studio knew they were about to witness something extraordinary. Ryan's voice, when he finally spoke, was quiet but carried the weight of finality. Jimmy, I want to make sure I understand what's happening here. You invited me onto your show under the pretense of promoting my film. Instead, you've spent the last 15 minutes attacking my character, my work ethic, my integrity, and my profession, all based on fabricated quotes and your own personal assumptions about who I am as a person. Jimmy stopped pacing and turned to face his guest, his expression a mixture of defiance and barely controlled rage. I'm asking the questions that need to be asked. If you can't handle that, maybe you're not as tough as you pretend to be. This isn't about being tough, Jimmy. This is about basic human decency and professional respect. You're not asking questions, you're making accusations. There's a difference between challenging journalism and public humiliation. The audience was completely transfixed, watching this slow-motion car crash unfold in real time. Some people had their hands over their mouths in shock. Others were leaning forward in their seats, unable to look away from the train wreck. Jimmy's laugh was bitter and harsh. Professional respect? You want to talk about professional respect? How about showing some respect for the people who built this industry before you showed up? How about acknowledging that your success isn't just about your talent, but about timing and luck and looking the right way at the right time? Ryan's eyes flashed with something dangerous. You know what, Jimmy? You're absolutely right. Timing and luck play a huge role in this business. I've never denied that. But so does hard work, dedication, and treating people with respect. And, right now, you're demonstrating a complete lack of all three. Don't lecture me about respect, Jimmy snarled, his voice rising to a near shout. You come in here with your carefully crafted image, your rehearsed humility, your calculated responses, and you expect me to just play along with the charade? Well, I'm not playing along anymore. The mask had completely slipped now. Jimmy was no longer even pretending to be a professional interviewer. He was a man having a very public breakdown, using his platform to unleash years of pent-up resentment and jealousy. Ryan stood there for a moment, absorbing the full scope of what he was dealing with. When he spoke again, his voice was steady and clear, cutting through the chaos like a knife. Jimmy, I genuinely feel sorry for you. I don't know what's happening in your life that's made you this angry, this bitter, but taking it out on me isn't going to solve whatever problems you're dealing with. The words hit Jimmy like a physical blow. His face contorted with rage, and for a moment it looked like he might actually lose complete control. You feel sorry for me? You feel sorry for me? That's rich coming from someone who's never had to work for anything real in his entire life. That's it, Ryan said firmly, his voice cutting through Jimmy's rant like a blade. I'm done with this. Jimmy, you clearly have some personal issues that you need to work through. But I'm not going to stand here and be your verbal punching bag while you figure out your life. Ryan began moving toward the edge of the stage, his intentions clear. Jimmy panicked, realizing that his guest was actually leaving, something that had never happened in the show's history. Oh, so now you're running away? That's your solution. Just walk away when things get a little uncomfortable. Ryan stopped and turned back, his expression deadly serious. Jimmy, there's a difference between uncomfortable and abusive. What you've done tonight isn't journalism, it isn't entertainment, and it certainly isn't professional. It's cruel, it's unwarranted, and frankly, it says a lot more about you than it does about me. The audience was absolutely silent now, watching this unprecedented moment unfold. Some people were clearly uncomfortable, others seemed fascinated by the raw, human drama playing out in front of them. Jimmy, realizing he was losing control of the situation entirely, made one last desperate attempt to regain the upper hand. You know what your problem is, Ryan? You can't handle the truth. You've been coddled and protected for so long that the moment someone challenges you, you fall apart. Ryan paused at the edge of the stage, his hand on the curtain that separated the interview area from backstage. Jimmy, the only truth here is that you've embarrassed yourself, your show, and your network tonight. I came here to have a conversation about my work, and instead I got ambushed by someone who seems to be having some kind of personal crisis. Personal crisis? Jimmy's voice cracked slightly. You don't know anything about my life or my struggles. You don't know what it's like to work your way up from nothing, to fight for every opportunity, to watch people like you get handed everything on a silver platter. And there it was. The real truth behind Jimmy's attack finally came spilling out. This wasn't about Ryan's acting or his statements or his Oscar campaign. This was about jealousy, pure and simple. Jimmy had spent years watching actors achieve the kind of success and recognition that he felt he deserved, and tonight, all that resentment had exploded. Ryan's expression softened slightly, but his resolve remained firm. Jimmy, I understand that this business can be frustrating and unfair, but attacking me isn't going to change your circumstances or make you feel better about your own career. It's just going to make you look petty and unprofessional. Don't you dare patronize me, Jimmy screamed, his voice echoing through the studio. Don't you dare stand there and act like you're better than me. Ryan shook his head sadly. I'm not acting like I'm better than you, Jimmy. I'm just refusing to participate in whatever this is. You've turned what should have been a simple interview into a personal attack, and I'm not going to enable that behavior by staying here and taking more abuse. With that, Ryan Gosling did something that had never happened in late-night television history. He walked off the set of a major talk show in the middle of a live broadcast, leaving Jimmy Kimmel standing alone on his stage, exposed and humiliated, in front of millions of viewers. The audience sat in stunned silence as Ryan disappeared behind the curtain. Jimmy stood there for a long moment, clearly unsure of how to proceed. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of his confusion and embarrassment. Finally, Jimmy attempted to regain some composure, but his voice was shaky and uncertain. Well, I guess that's one way to handle criticism. We'll be right back after this commercial break. But everyone knew there was no coming back from what had just happened. Ryan Gosling had just delivered the most dignified and devastating exit in television history, leaving Jimmy Kimmel to face the consequences of his own behavior. The interview that was supposed to be routine promotion had become a masterclass in how not to treat your guests, and how grace under pressure can be the most powerful response to bullying and unprofessional conduct. The footage would be replayed millions of times, analyzed by media experts, and remembered as the night that Ryan Gosling showed the world what real class looks like, even in the face of unprecedented hostility. So what did you think about Ryan's handling of this impossible situation? Did he make the right choice by walking away? Or should he have stayed and continued to defend himself? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories from Hollywood's most dramatic moments.